qualify for the Players' Championship. There's a real healthy legacy scene in Minneapolis, so not too surprised to see these guys off to a pretty good start here this weekend.
Was not aware.
Yeah. A Bayou and a Deathrite Shaman, while Baugh will sacrifice a Wooded Foothills. He'll get a land out of his deck, play a Green Sun Zenith, which will be for a Dryad Arbor, ideally. Oh, look at that forest. It's a pretty one. There's the Dryad Arbor. He'll shuffle that in. And then we'll be good to go here in just a moment as we head back Tickal's way. Quick shuffle there of Baugh's deck, and then Tickal will move forward with his Charlotte's Saltai deck, a deck that we know is pretty popular in the room here this weekend. Rudy Briska, Chris Van Meter, a couple other players playing it this weekend. Maelstrom Pulse the draw.
And now with I guess there's not a whole lot that Tickal can flip over the deck off of a Charlotte's Agent here that allows him to kill the Dryad Arbor. He can still hit discard spells and cantrips.
Ancestral Visions too.
Yep.
Brainstorm will work just fine. This will allow Tickal to draw 3 and put 2 back. A couple more copies of Abrupt Decay, which is both good and bad. He's got quite a few of those. Brainstorm done resolving very quickly, and now we head back Baugh's way. So he'll untap with 2 lands. Take a draw step here, will Jacob. Crater of Behemoth is what he picked up.
Though notably no blue cards in Tickal's hand to pair with the Force of Will. So something like Glimpse of Nature here could be very, very good against Tickal's hand.
No Glimpse of Nature just yet for Baugh, it appears. He does have 2 copies of Elvish Visionary in hand, however.
Might look at a hand like Tickal's and say, well, he's got a Tarmogoyf that's bigger than anything in Baugh's deck, and he's got a bunch of removal spells to work with. Elves can play a slow game, and you can set up things like Wirewood Symbiote plus Elvish Visionary, or just kind of dump random stuff on the table and get to Craterhoof Behemoth.
Quirion Ranger comes down. Baugh going to use that. Untap the Dryad Arbor, pick up the forest, replay the forest. We'll see what else he wants to play this turn. He does have a green mana floating. That'll allow him to play the Elvish Visionary, so that'll draw a card. Picked up a copy of Glimpse.
And I think you might see a development turn this turn into Fireworks next turn, and if Tickal does not draw a blue card or some way to get the Glimpse out of hand, all these removal spells are not worth a whole lot.
Might see a Heritage Druid here in just a moment. Yep. So easy for this deck to go off. Or just have a big... I mean, this is turn 2. It's so easy. I'll pass the turn back. So setting up for the big turn next turn. Tickal will play a Polluted Delta very quickly. Charlotte's Agent going to come into the red zone. That'll do just fine. See what's next here for Matthew. Does have 2 copies of Abrupt Decay in hand. Also has a fetch land on the battlefield with Deathrite Shaman, so he has the ability to cast both of those this turn if he'd like to. We'll start with a Tarmogoyf. I'll just pass the turn back. Baugh with a Nettle Sentinel. See, Tarmogoyf is a 1/2 here. Just a Brainstorm in the graveyard.
With Glimpse, Nettle Sentinel, Elvish Visionary, Natural Order, feels like the tools are here for Baugh to go off this turn.
Yep. Which way does he want to go? That's a good question. He'll start with a Glimpse. You have to feel if this resolves, Jacob's got to imagine I've got the green light for everything this turn.
And, you know, it's almost impossible for Tickal to stop anything now with that Abrupt Decay in hand, because if he goes after Heritage Druid, well, Baugh simply floats 3 mana and can go about his business.
Mm-hmm. Jacob's still waiting to see if this is going to resolve.
Tickal just probably thinking if there's anything to be done with the removal spell in his hand. I mean, you can't take it with you, so you might as well kill something.
Yeah. Well, there's an Abrupt Decay.
And the upshot here is that this play has the possibility of bottlenecking Baugh's mana down the line. If he happens just to not find another copy of Heritage Druid, he may draw a couple cards this turn and puts himself into play, but not fully be able to go off.
Glimpse is going to resolve here. 3 mana is going to be added from Heritage Druid. Now there's just 1 green floating. Have to draw 2 cards here, does Baugh. Keep in mind, Baugh hasn't played a land yet this turn either.
Yeah, he wants to wait as long as possible, so if he draws Gaia's Cradle, then he can really make something happen.
There's Nettle Sentinel, draw a card. Is there more for Baugh to do on this turn?
It looks like he has drawn the Cradle. Don't know if there's anything for him to do with it, really.
Cradle will be tapping for 5 mana this turn. Looks like his hand is pretty land heavy, however. There's a Cradle. Might just be natural order time. Yeah. See what creature he wants to sacrifice. Sacrifice the Visionary. The Dryad Arbor is eligible to attack. Hasn't used Quirion Ranger yet this turn. Might be able to attack for lethal here.
Clearhope's going to be +5 if you were to go get it. He's short on lethal on the board.
It looks like he's going for Wirewood. So he wants to keep his Glimpse turn going. So he's got 1 green mana floating at this time, I believe. For what it's worth, he only plays 1 Crater of Behemoth.
Ah.
That's the difference, yep.
Gotcha. Most lists that I have seen over the last year or so have played 2 copies.
That's the issue at hand here. Why he's not searching up another Crater Hoof, potentially, is because he's got his 1 in his hand. Quirion Ranger's going to go active. Going to return a forest, untap the Dryad Arbor. See how much further Baugh can go here. Now he'll use the Dryad Arbor for some mana, pick up Elvish Visionary, untap the Dryad Arbor with Wirewood Symbiote. He'll redeploy the Visionary, draw 2 cards, of course, because there's a Glimpse that's been played. Found another Quirion Ranger. So now he'll use that. Play this. So should have no mana floating in the pool now.
Baugh has drawn a lot of lands.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he has.
I mean, this is still fine next turn.
He can Hardcast Crater next turn.
Yeah.
A Wasteland to draw there for Tickal. That's actually a pretty big one.
Yep.
For as many lands as Baugh has drawn here, I don't think he's drawn another copy of Gaia's Cradle. Looks like Tickal's going to start with Abrupt Decay. Going to go after Wirewood Symbiote. Yeah, it's going to go down. It's a great one to start with if you're going to kill any of the creatures from Elves.
Interesting. I think instead of Wasteland, I think Tickal may be contemplating just Maelstrom Pulse on the Quirion Rangers.
Okay.
That does a lot to stunt Baugh's mana as well.
Yep. Here comes some attackers. The Tarmogoyf's a lot bigger now. Looks like it's a 4 or 5. Might be even bigger than that. You see him checking. Sorcery creature. Sorcery creature instant, no lands. Wasteland after combat, so he misses out on a point of damage that way. No, just pass the turn back.
And I think my preference would have been for Maelstrom Pulse, just because Baugh didn't play a creature there, even though he had a mana last turn. So you know he doesn't have a creature in his hand. But you have no information about whether or not there's another Gaia's Cradle in his hand. And if Baugh does have another Gaia's Cradle, that play is basically for naught.
Yeah.
Does not do a whole lot. And the Maelstrom Pulse does some work to take the wind out of the sails of the Cradle anyway. He's just down 2 creatures.
Nettle Sentinel rumbling on in. Not the most impressive of turns here for Jacob. He'll deploy another Nettle Sentinel and tap the first. I think that'll be his entire turn. As you mentioned, he looks like he's got like 5 lands and then a Crater of Behemoth in hand. Tickal going to activate Deathray Shaman. Abrupt Decay of the draw.
Tickal is really looking for a blue card to pair with Force of Will.
Yeah. Maelstrom Pulse going to take care of Nettle Sentinels.
At that point, his position is great. He's still at risk of getting killed by the right top deck.
Dry Arbor is going to block one of the creatures, looks like the Tarmogoyf, and Quirion Ranger allow him to pick it up. Pass the turn back, will Tickal. Over to Baugh. Cradle the draw. Cradle a little late to the party.
Yeah, would have been really good on some of these previous turns. Would have just allowed Baugh to power out the Crater Behemoth in his hand.
All Baugh can do is pass the turn back now. Tickal just looking for a blue card, as you mentioned. He just found a Verdant Catacombs, which does help a little bit here. Need some more fuel for the Deathrite Shaman. There's Elvish Visionary. It's going to jump in front of Tarmogoyf. Tickal considering passing the turn back, and he will. Baugh will draw. May have been Zenith. Didn't get a great look. There's Windswept Heath. Oh, there's actually a copy of Reclamation Sage.
So I guess it's not a total disaster here, as there is a Charlotte's Agent in play, but hard to imagine Baugh can use his whole turn that way.
Yeah. Seen better draws, that's for sure. Dryad Arbor going to untap. There's Rex Sage. It's going to go after that Charlotte's Agent, as you mentioned. Probably on chump blocking duty on the Tarmogoyf, too.
Mm-hmm.
Baugh trying to hold on here. He's not in great shape.
He was, day late and $1 short a number of different ways on his Glimpse turn. Even if he just had a second Craterhoof Behemoth in his deck, he could have Craterhoof attacked for a bunch and maybe finish off the game via combat damage, but very challenging now.
There's your block.
No, it looks like Tickal going here for a hard cast Force of Will on the Reclamation Sage.
Oh, wow.
Well, he gets a bunch of chump blocks for his trouble this turn.
I guess that's
At
true.
least one.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine Baugh can do very much without mana, and every time you force a chump block and keep a creature off the table, it means Cradle's impact is diminished. And now he's even got Wasteland Abrupt Decay. I mean, he's going to just nuke almost all of Baugh's permanents.
Yeah.
Wrap up the game next turn.
There's no coming back from that. There's the Wasteland. I like just aggressively using Abrupt Decay. Maybe I'm incorrect about that, but
I don't think it matters a whole lot, as Baugh has to chump block the Tarmogoyf and does not have to block the Charlotte's Agent no matter how it breaks. So I don't think there's anything to be gained by using the Abrupt Decay before damage.
Okay.
Before blocks. I think Baugh's blocks are basically face up, and killing one of the creatures before combat doesn't really matter.
With 2 Quern Rangers, can pick up the Dryad Arbor. Here's Abrupt Decay to kill this. And now you have nothing left in its lethal attack. So Baugh does get to search up a land with the Windswept Heath. That's why he falls down to 5. And there's another Dryad Arbor there, but Baugh's resources have just been whittled away. His glimpse just didn't break his way.
Yep. Just kind of left him with some stuff in play.
And
no
he
mana,
drew a lot of lands.
No way to rebuild.
Yeah.
Drew a lot of lands.
Tarmogoyf going to get chump blocked. Ball's going to fall down to 3 from Charlotte's Agent. Tickal will pass the turn back. He'll draw, and that's going to do it. So Matthew Tickle's going to win again number 1 here over Jacob Baugh. Charlotte's Sultai up a game here over Elves, which means we're going to turn our attention to the sideboard here, and we will start with Jacob Baugh. He's got a Sylvan Library, a Scavenging Ooze, a Natural Order, Progenitus, 4 Cabal Therapies, 3 Abrupt Decays, a Gaddock Teague, a Surgical Extraction, and 2 copies of Thoughtseize.
So you can bring in the Sylvan Library and the Scavenging Ooze pretty easily in this kind of matchup, and some of the discard spells as well. The question is he going to want to go to Progenitus? Progenitus is powerful in matchups where you think it's that your Natural Order is likely to resolve, but you may lack the critical mass to be able to kill with a Crater Hoof shot. I think in a matchup where your opponent could easily have Liliana the Veil, Toxic Deluge even, I don't think Progenitus is great, but I know that a lot of Elf players like to bring it up, right, to bring the card in slow matchups just in general.
On the other side of things, you got a Life from the Loam with Thoughtseize, a Vendilion Click, and Notion Thief. Force of Will, Wasteland, Grafdigger's Cage, Nile Spellbomb, a Disfigure, a Pithy Needle, a Golgari Charm, a Scrubland, a Null Rod, and 2 copies of Meddling Mage.
So the Pithy Needle here seems very good. A lot of activated powers in the Elf deck. Additional removal and things like Disfigure and Golgari Charm are very good. Grafdigger's Cage is a nice answer to a lot of the stuff going on in the Elf deck. And I think you want your extra copy of Force of Will and Vendilion Click.
Well, those are the options there for both players. Jacob Baugh will be on the play here for game number 2. In the meantime, we're talking about our Season 3 Invitational champion. It's Alex Bostecki. Of course, he did defeat Steve Mann in the finals of our Season 3 Invitational in New Jersey, an epic affair, and that's why he's got this fantastic germ token for your Batter Skulls and Bone Hordes and Flare Husk. There's a couple ways to go about getting it.
Yep. Anyone who attends any of our 2-day $20,000 Open Series events, like the one we're having right now in St. Louis, gets a copy of this token, as well as anyone who signs up for any of our 5K Premier IQs, both the ones that we run Sundays here at the Open Series events and ones that you can bring to your local store. And if you can't make it out to any of our events, any order from StarCityGames.com, $5 or more, will come with a copy of this token.
Congratulations to our Season 3 Invitational champion, Alex Bostecki, who look forward to seeing him at the Players' Championship.
Yes.
That was a very impressive victory by him. So we'll see if he can capitalize on that and see what kind of run he can make at the Players' Championship, which is going to be a heck of a tournament to watch.
And more new blood in our Players' Championship.
Yeah, got some new faces. Jacob Wilson, too.
Yep.
Some old faces like Jim Davis and Kevin Jones, and some new faces as well. So I'm looking forward to everybody who's coming out for that tournament. We got so many more slots that we have to punch to the tournament in Roanoke at the end of the year. That's what Season 4 really is for. Elves, Charlotte's Sultai, very popular decks here this weekend, not much of a surprise. Elves continues to be a very dominant deck and also just very popular in the Midwest. You know, I think of that Open Series in Indianapolis that we had last year where there were 4 Elves decks in the top 4. We see Chris Anderson play the deck quite a bit, even though he is on lands this weekend. Riley Curran plays the deck quite a bit. We see quite a bit of Elves. And now we're seeing a huge uptick in Charlotte's Sultai. It appears since the banning of Dig Through Time.
Yeah, it certainly has helped a lot. You know, we're still early on, so it's hard to make too bold of predictions. But given where the metagame was at pre-Concetar Cure, you would expect that the decks that showed up this weekend would reflect where the metagame was at before. The blue card drawers there distorted things for a little while, and the metagame was around very velocity-centric treasure cruise decks or good stuff dig through time decks or combo dig through time decks, and now we should see the metagame revert to what it was, summer of last year.
Looks like Force of Wolves are hanging out in the sideboard now for Tickal.
I mean, that does come with some risks. Force of Will is your best protection, obviously, against glimpse draws and fast natural order draws.
Kind of get a better idea of how he wants to sideboard here.
If he had a lot of removal and multiple copies of Toxic Deluge, I could see maybe getting away from it. But his list doesn't really have all that much. It's got one copy of Toxic Deluge in the main deck, none in the sideboard.
He's thinking about it. He hasn't reached for those forces yet.
The only concern that I have about Force of Will in the matchup from Tickal's side is he doesn't have that many blue cards. And we saw that come up in the first game there. And if he's bringing, if he's setting out, let's say, his 2 copies of Baleful Strix, I think that's reasonable. I think you could get away from Ancestral Visions a little slow for this kind of matchup. Jace the Mind Sculptor. He starts running really low on blue cards. He's already a little on the light side. And if he's setting out any of his blue cards, he might feel like Force of Will is just not a tenable option anymore.
Well, it feels like he's gotten away from Visions a little bit, and it appears every single one of the Force of Wills.
And if he's expecting Baugh to go to discard spells as well,
You don't want counter magic then, really.
Force of Will gets tougher and tougher to be powerful for you.
Tickal's happy enough with his setup, so he'll present the deck on over. We'll see how this game does break. Right now, got Eric Watkins on top of the standings. Eric Hawkins on top of the standings here with Storm. He is 6-1 as well as his good friend Matthew. Tom Ross 6-1 here this weekend with Infect. So we're seeing some players that we oftentimes see at the Open Series doing well yet again here on what's a very important tournament for many people.
Matthew Tickal, someone who is close to the top of the standings on the leaderboard for a couple months here, has fallen off. It looked like he was a lock to play in the Players' Championship, or at least very likely. The last couple of months have not been good to him.
Yep.
He's slipped in the standings now. He comes in here with only 1 bye.
Looks like Tickal going to take a mulligan.
But the quick count, game 1, if it's 3 copies of Force of Will, setting that aside, I'm counting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 15 blue cards. That's not that many for Force of Will.
It's never been a very good Force of Will deck. You don't have a lot of blue cards. You kind of want to cast all your blue cards, which is a weird thing to say. So it's never really been a Force of Will deck, in my opinion. You kind of play Force of Will as like a necessary evil to, I guess, make your combo matchup a little bit better. But you've never really had a good combo matchup either. But you don't want to ignore it altogether.
Right.
Green Sun Zenith here off of Windswept Teeth. That's going to search up for Forest and then a Dryad Arbor. So that'll be Baugh start yet again. Very familiar with what we saw in the first game. Abrupt decay of the draw here for Tickal. He's got a pivot needle in hand, though I'm curious to see what he wants to name with that. A lot of targets and elves. Basic Swamp. And now here's the needle. So we'll get confirmation on what that artifact will name here in just a second.
I think with a removal-heavy hand, Wirewood Symbiote is the most likely card to be named.
Okay.
Cut off the Elvish Visionary route.
Wirewood Symbiote is the name here for Matthew Tickal.
I think that Tickal may have his copy of Toxic Deluge in hand, which makes Wirewood Symbiote even a better card to name. Let Baugh build up a board, sweep up everything, and not allow Baugh to play that Visionary Symbiote game to rebuild.
Something that Els does so well. Dry Arbor going to come into the red zone. There's a Bayou past the turn back. Deathrite Shaman, Verdant Catacombs. Tickal will pass the turn back over to Jacob. Jacob started pretty anemic. Perhaps he's setting up for a glimpse turn. Yep, well, it's going to be Harris Druid. And now Cradle. That'll tap for 2, 3, 4. Natural order. All right, what are we going to dig up? Is it Progenitus time?
I think it stands to reason. He's got a Heritage Druid in play as Liliana the Veil insurance if he's worried about that.
Fair enough. This is very, very hard for Charlotte Sultai to beat.
Deluge.
It'll cost a lot.
Not saying it's cheap,
Yep.
but you can get out from under this.
If that was Ross Merriam, he would have drawn Progenitus that turn.
First card in the opening hand.
Yeah. A classic Ross Merriam play. Never seen him actually natural order for Progenitus.
Seen it drawn a lot.
Yeah. Deathrite Shaman going to remove a land, and now here is Toxic Deluge.
It's a painful way to do it, but you look at Baugh's hand, not a lot of cards left.
Yep. Get the shuffle Progenitus back in. Maybe it'll come now.
Yep. Swim into the top of the lake. Poking its head above water. Trying to see what's going on.
I want to play.
What'd I miss?
Time to draw. Nettle Sentinel, Glimpse. A couple different cards here in hand for Baugh. He'll go with the Nettle Sentinel. There's a Dryad Arbor. I think Baugh might just have to pass the turn back here. Yep. Over to Tickal we go. I think he may have just drawn a Grafdigger's Cage. He did. Does he want to play off curve a little bit?
Well, the issue if he plays off curve is he goes to 5 from the hit on board, and he just might die before he gets all the stuff out of his hands.
Mm-hmm. He's got Jace over there, Tarmogoyf, Abrupt Decay. Quite a few options, honestly, on what to play. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see him just want to cast a 2-mana spell as opposed to a 1-mana spell at this point.
Because if he can draw a land, then he gets to play something and cast Grafdigger's Cage in the same turn. If he plays off curve this turn, he's probably playing off curve for numerous turns because his hand's nothing but 2-mana spells.
Just going to play the cage, though. Wow.
Well, I think that Tickal might be working from the vantage point of, all right, I shut off any Progenitus shenanigans. After that, I untap and play Tarmogoyf. Baugh may not be able to attack. Then the next turn, I can use a removal spell or cast Jace.
Here's Visionary. That'll draw 2. We're going a little Glimpse turn now. Cradle's going to tap for 3 green. There's Wirewood. That'll draw a card. Keep in mind, Needle's locking that down, though.
But this is kind of the board state that Tickal was hoping to set up. Is hoping that the Tarmogoyf be able to attack. Baugh might have just put too much on the table for Tarmogoyf to be able to stabilize this game, however.
That's pretty likely. Yep, can't use that. And it's explained to him that why would somebody that's naming Needle is on Needle. There we go. So that Dryad Arbor should still be tapped too. So we'll make sure that does happen. You put the needle on top of the card. Boom, problem solved.
Sort of.
Might not even get to attack now.
Might just disappear. Seems like a recipe for it to get shuffled into someone's deck for game 3.
Yeah, you know.
Not saying there's for sure a game 3, it's just looking likely. Golgari Charm is the draw here.
Yes. It'd be a good draw. The draw was not Golgari Charm, unfortunately, for Matthew Tickal. He picked up a copy of Charlotte's Agent. So we'll see what Tickal wants to play this turn. Again, he's got plenty of options. He's just stuck on mana. Had a Toxic Deluge away a Progenitus earlier this game.
So this is the decision here. He can play Tarmogoyf. If he plays Tarmogoyf instead of Jace, he's down a loot the next turn. If he casts Jace, Jace cannot block the Nettle Sentinel, has to block something else. And then Tickal falls to 1, and then suddenly fetch lands are off the table, et cetera, et cetera. I think that I prefer the Tarmogoyf as well.
Here's Green Sun Zenith.
Yeah. Can't search, but he can still cast it. Untap the Nettle Sentinel. But if all goes to plan here, and Tickal blocks the Nettle Sentinel and goes to 2, Golgari Charm is a very live draw.
Yes, it is. This one's not over. You know, Charlotte's Agent and removal spell's good. Assuming it doesn't have to crack a fetch land.
No, oh yeah, because it Tickles on 2. Yep,
Yeah.
that's still good.
Oh, he's looking for something. Awkward.
Well, fetch land still gives him Golgari Charm. You can still Charlotte's Agent.
She can still Charlotte's Agent and Golgari Charm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
that's
still
true.
an out.
Yep. Very good point. There's Bayou. Can he hit the home run is the question. There is a card here that is perfect for Matthew Tickal in this situation.
And if he hits, it's going to be really hard for Baugh to recover.
Yep.
It's not just it's stable, it's he's ahead, big time.
Well, there's the attack.
And Tickal is attacking first because he knows his out is just Golgari Charm and he doesn't want to lose a point off the Tarmogoyf attack.
Yep. Spins the wheel. No. No. Ancestral Visions. I get to draw 3 cards and I lose. Usually unfortunate.
Usually the one you're most excited about, but Ancestral no good there. Had to be Golgari Charm. Tickal couldn't find it.
Jacob Baugh does tie things up against Matthew Tickal. Elves, Charlotte Saltai getting ready here for game number 3. These players going back and forth, duking it out. Got an update for you guys. Tom Ross did win his match. He's 7-1 now. He beat Infect last round, won the mirror. That matchup's got some real back and forth to it.
For a little bit.
Yeah, it's not long. It's not a particularly long match, that's for sure.
Tom with a Spells Guide in his sideboard. Prepared.
Came ready.
Came ready for the mirror.
Totally right. Just how he drew it up.
I do worry with the way that Tickal sideboarded that he's just very vulnerable to the spells that are in Baugh's deck.
It might change things up now.
Does not have a lot of ways to fight over Glimpse, Natural Order, and Green Sun Zenith. Just the one copy of Grafdigger's Cage, honestly, and I don't know if that's enough.
Yeah, you know, just the forces in the board. I don't know if he needs all 4 or 3 or whatever, and maybe he just needs 2, but I think he should have at least some number in his deck.
Yeah.
Personal opinion, of course, but I wouldn't want to just be... I don't like the feeling of just, oh, you drew Natural Order, there's nothing I can do about that.
Because most of Tickal's forms of interaction here are sorcery speed, and Baugh can kill him from a very low base. It's not like it's a guarantee that Tickal gets to untap and cast Toxic Deluge when Baugh's doing his thing. When Baugh goes off, it can be lethal right there, and leaning too heavily on sorceries to protect yourself in that kind of matchup is very dangerous. I can understand not wanting to have a bunch of Force of Wills. We already mentioned that the blue count on his spells in the deck is pretty low, but I'm not sure you can get away from that card altogether.
Well, these players will shuffle up, get ready here for game number 3. Looks like there might be some re-sideboarding done by both players. So we're talking Next Level Library here by Patrick Chapin, the 2 very popular books for all skill levels, and they're available now.
Yeah, 2 books, Next Level Deck Building with a focus on deck building, and Next Level Magic focusing on playing a better game. Players of all ability levels can learn from these 2 books, and they're available right now, paperback and ebook over at starcgames.com/nextlevel.
The innovator, the Hall of Famer, Pro Tour champion, 2-time world runner-up, Patrick Chapin. We get ready here for game number 3 between Jacob Baugh and Matthew Tickal. Should have enough time to finish here. You got about 14 minutes up to play here for these 2 players. Maybe a little second guessing on how to sideboard for game number 3, given what they saw in game number 2.
If Tickal is going to leave his Force of Wills in the sideboard, or mostly leave it in the sideboard, I would strongly consider bringing in Meddling Mage, because that's also a way to shut down spells that you can't interact with on your own turn.
That's true.
That's a way to do it. If he's worried about his blue card count being too low to support a bunch of copies of Force of Will, Meddling Mage can name Natural Order, it can name Glimpse of Nature, and that's a way to work around those cards as well.
Gotcha. Interesting matchup here. Yeah, the funny thing about this matchup is like Charlotte Sultai can really bring the heat if they want to in this matchup. Like if they think there's gonna be a lot of elves, cards like Toxic Deluge, Golgari Charm, Engineered Plague, stuff like that, they can really bring it. But it looks like Tickal's kind of hedged and just been a little bit broader across the format.
Yeah, Knight of Soul's Betrayal is a card we see from time to time. Very good in this matchup as well.
A lot of different ways you can go. Tickal going to be on the play here. Take a look at his opening hand.
And it looks like Tickal has a hand with Brainstorm and some Abrupt Decays and some lands. And you can see, the look on his face right now, the way that he's shuffling right now, it says it all. This hand is very vulnerable to, even though this is a good-looking hand, it's got Brainstorm, it's got a removal spell, it's got a way to shuffle, this hand just might be too susceptible to Natural Order or a Glimpse for Tickal to keep.
Well, he's going to keep it. There's Deathrite Shaman. He brought in Notion Thief.
That's a way to try to do it.
Trying to get you. There's a Brainstorm on the end step.
And it looks like Tickal has again found his 1 copy of Toxic Deluge, which is a huge help.
Yep.
Now we can let Baugh develop the board a little bit. If Baugh has a developmental glimpse turn and puts a bunch of stuff on the table, Tickal at least has an answer to that.
One more card going to go back here for Tickal. And then that'll be the card that he draws for the turn. Just wants to make sure he sets up the Brainstorm right. Looks like he might have a fetch land involved here. Notion Thief to draw. Now he really wants to get him.
Yep.
If he's not shuffling that away, he really wants to get him. There's never been more of a I want to get you card.
If you want to pay 4 mana to counter a Glimpse, it's a good way to do it.
Yeah. There's Query Ranger. See if that resolves. It will. And Baugh just going to hang tight with his Deathrite Shaman. No lands to remove, and removing Brainstorm deals more damage than attacking, so it makes sense. Tickal will activate his Verdant Catacombs, search up a land here. Gonna go with Underground Sea. Looks like we have an Abrupt Decay on the way. Gonna take care of Deathrite Shaman. Take care of Brainstorm with the Deathrite, deal 2. That'll do it for this turn, as now we're going to head back Tickal's way.
Tickal might start going after some mana here. He's got a bunch of wastelands.
Yeah, a little wasteland action.
And if he, you know, constricts Baugh's mana, he doesn't have to worry that much about a big combo turn. And if all Baugh can do is drop some stuff on the table, Toxic Deluge takes care of that as well.
He's going to play wasteland, but just pass the turn. Verdant Catacombs the land. Baugh will sacrifice that. Basic forest, the weapon of choice. Now there's Evolutionary Leap.
Well, this is a very powerful plan to try to beat removal. I mean, Tickal can answer this at least via Abrupt Decay, but you cannot leave this card unchecked on the table if you're playing some sort of control deck.
No, I think you have to kill that. Yep. That's exactly what Tickal's going to do. He's almost, his hand is forced to kill that. Another wasteland.
3 copies in Tickal's list.
Typically, you only see 2. Interesting. Not firing away yet. Sylvan Library the draw. There's Sylvan Library. And the Ranger making it difficult to activate the wastelands in a profitable manner.
And Tickal might be just asking for confirmation. Sylvan Library v. Notion Thief.
Oof.
Sylvan Library among Magic's most poorly templated cards.
Yeah, really not good. Oh, great. We can read it right now if we'd like. Tickal going to take a look at the Oracle. I don't even know if this is going to help him. In situations like this, I love to pull the judge's side and I go, hey, does this work with Notion Thief?
Well, I believe Sylvan Library does cause you to draw the cards. This is the reason that, for example, it interacts with Brainstorm. You have to call over a judge in some of those spots. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's my favorite. Just go, hey, man. I know that I just read that card. I don't know how this works. So.
I'm not gonna act like I'm 100% sure this is good for Tickal. I'm like 99% sure this is really good.
I'm like right up there with you.
But I've messed up cards from Legends before, so let's just see how this shakes out.
Ancestral Visions is on suspend. Well, he's not playing Notion Thief.
Okay.
So it must not work out the way that we want it to. And Baugh says, I'm just going to pay 8 life. Well, when are you going to cast Notion Thief then?
Unless he's really trying to bait him into a big glimpse turn. But even then,
he'll just stop casting stuff.
He just stops
it's
casting.
just not going to work. There's Wirewood. Queen Ranger going to come across for 1. Vision's going to go down to 3. I guess you can target your opponent with Ancestral Visions when you have Notion Thief. Get it?
Sure.
Get it?
Is the issue that Baugh can announce it as a May, and then that requires the Notion Thief to get played, and then Baugh can choose not to use it?
I believe so. I mean, it's just weird in such a funky way.
Yeah.
But my larger point, as you see, Wastelands are going to go after the lands now, is if you have Notion Thief in your deck, when are you going to play it?
Well, I think
basically.
I think Tickal's hope here was kind of what happened, which is where Baugh's going to draw some cards, play out a bunch of stuff, then the Deluge answers it. You basically eat 8 life out of Baugh, so there's only so many times that he can fire back in with the Sylvan Library, drawing a bunch of cards.
Okay.
Your Ancestral goes off the stack, and you can try to win the game that way.
Okay.
It's an odd path, though. I mean, Baugh can Baugh can play this card advantage game. It's not like Tickal has all the sweepers in the world. That Toxic Deluge is it, unless he's able to get to Jace Friend's Prodigy and flash it back.
Here's a Brainstorm. Two cards off to go back. You saw Visions tick down to 2 on the upkeep. Brainstorm done resolving. There's Misty. All right, so here is Notion Thief. So I guess we'll find out for once and for all, right?
Yep.
How this weird interaction works.
I mean, Baugh can opt out. I don't think Sylvan Library is a mandatory.
Sure.
So you can just say, okay, I'm not using it.
Well, enjoy that Progenitus for your draw step then.
Always.
Yeah. Deathrite Shaman and Nettle Sentinel. Pass the turn back. Vision's down to 1. Here's Tarmogoyf. I think Vendilion Click was the draw.
Vendilion Click's pretty good here.
Yep.
Tickle's in a spot where he wants to race. It's combo with Notion Thief.
Boom. Draw step. V-click you. Yeah. You. What do we want here?
Probably Nettle Sentinel.
Yeah. 2 natural orders, a glimpse of Progenitus, and then 2 abrupt decays.
Vendilion Click is draw a card.
Yep. So Tickal will be drawing. Thanks.
Yep. Combo with Spirit of the Labyrinth also.
Yep, very
for
true.
those of you.
Look at you
Square
knowing
the space.
Look at you knowing all of the combos with Vendilion Click.
There's probably others I'm not thinking of.
Or saving.
Saving for a rainy day.
Yeah, saving for your next Legacy tournament. Visions will resolve now. 3 cards coming, plus 1 from the draw step. There's a Charless Agent. See what this cascades into. Tarmogoyf. Thump. Delta's the land. Needle. Deathrite Shamans are on lock now. Here comes Tarmogoyf. It's a very Charless, Sultai game right now. Pluto Delta going to be sacrificed. And now Abrupt Decay is going to take care of Sylvan Library.
Not sure there's a lot to be gained there, other than growing Tarmogoyf, I guess.
That's about it. Library is unlocked because of the, well, 1, because of Jacob's life total, and 2, because of the Notion Thief.
Yep.
And much like the first game that we saw Tickal win, when you're playing against Elves, I think the trick here is to just kind of annihilate their resources. Keep as few on the board as possible, and then they just don't have a lot to work with.
The deck does not come back well. Once you hit them with the first real huge blow, the first removals, the first sweeper, the first Jitte hit, does not come back very easily.
You see Baugh's going to concede the game here because he's got no board. Tickle's worked him down. His draw some card with Ancestral Visions is going to get the job done. He'll win this matchup here over Jacob Baugh. 2 games to 1. Charlotte Sultai going to move on to 7-1. Elves will fall down to 6-2. And we knew coming into this tournament the name players were going to play Charlotte Sultai, and it has not disappointed. It's looked very, very good here this weekend.